Nikola Tesla was born around midnight between July 9th and 10th of 1856 during a fierce lightning storm. According to family legend, midway through the birth, the midwife wrung her hands and declared the lightning a bad omen. "This child will be a child of darkness," she said, to which his mother replied, "No, he will be a child of light." Nikola Tesla's father was an Orthodox priest. Tesla's mother, whose father was also an Orthodox priest, had a talent for making homecraft tools, mechanical appliances, and the ability to memorize Serbian epic poems. Nikola credited his eidetic memory and creative abilities to his mother's genetics and influence. Tesla is best known for his discovery and invention of alternating current, which made today's modern electrical appliances possible. Tesla developed and used fluorescent bulbs in his lab some 40 years before modern industry invented them. Everything from a precursor to Kirlian photography, which has the ability to document life force, to what we now use in medical diagnostics, modern X-ray devices, were invented by Tesla. Tesla invented the radio years previous to Marconi. Radio signals are just another frequency that needs a transmitter and receiver, which Tesla demonstrated in 1893 during a presentation before the National Electric Light Association. The first remote-controlled model boat, demonstrated in 1898, utilized several large batteries and radio signal controlled switches, which then energized the boat's propeller, rudder, and scaled down running lights. His invention of the electric motor fundamentally changed the landscape of what we now take for granted: industrial fans, household appliances, water pumps, machine tools, power tools, disk drives, electric wristwatches, and compressors. Tesla was the first to conceptualize and discuss robotics, believing that one day his ideas would translate into robotic cars and even androids. Tesla invented the first lasers and worked on what many call a death ray for the military, and he built a tower that would use the natural frequencies of our universe to transmit data, including a wide range of information communicated through images, voice messages, and text. This represented the world's first wireless communication, but it also meant that aside from the cost of the tower itself, the universe was filled with free energy that could be utilized to form a worldwide web connecting all people in all places, as well as allow people to harness the free energy around them. And yet, to this day, the knowledge and genius of Tesla is not taught in our schools, and most of his inventions and discoveries have been plagiarized by others who made millions off his research. Tesla had what is known as a photographic memory. He was known to memorize books and images and stockpile visions for inventions in his head. He also had a powerful imagination and the ability to visualize in 3 dimensions, which he used to control the terrifying vivid nightmares he suffered from as a child. It's in part what makes him such a mystical and eccentric character in popular culture. Often, Tesla had visions that were linked to a word or idea he might have come across at other times. They would provide the solution to a particular problem he had encountered. Just by hearing the name of an item, he would be able to envision it in realistic detail. Tesla would visualize an invention in his mind with extreme precision, including all dimensions, before moving to the construction stage, a technique sometimes known as picture thinking. He typically did not make drawings by hand, but worked from memory. On the 7th of January of 1943, at the age of 86, Tesla died alone in his room at the New Yorker hotel. 2 days later, the FBI confiscated and sequestered away all of his papers and property, citing national security. To this day, no one knows where all of his papers are kept. It is said that within these papers and documents, Tesla had complete illustrations and information of anti-gravity, weather modification theories, and even the plans for a working flying saucer. To this day, much of his works and books reside in the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade. However, none of his more extraordinary papers are housed there. Many original documents are uncatalogued and may have been lost, stolen, censored, or damaged. Tesla's theories on the possibility of the transmission by radio waves goes back as far as lectures and demonstrations in 1893 in St. Louis, Missouri, the Franklin Institute in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and the National Electric Light Association. Tesla's demonstrations and principles were written about widely through various media outlets. Many devices, such as the Tesla coil, were used in the further development of radio. Tesla's radio wave experiments in 1896 were conducted in Gerlach Hotel, later renamed the Radio Wave Building, where he resided. In 1898, Tesla demonstrated a radio-controlled boat, which he dubbed teleautomation, to the public during an electrical exhibition at Madison Square Garden. The crowd that witnessed the demonstration made outrageous claims about the workings of the boat, such as magic, telepathy, and being piloted by a trained monkey hidden inside. Tesla tried to sell his idea to the U.S. military as a type of radio-controlled torpedo, but they showed little interest. Of course, today, the military uses guided missiles and drones, all of which operate on Tesla's original ideas. Among Tesla's extraordinary ideas was using radio waves and electrical energy bounced off the ionosphere to affect the weather. The High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program, or HAARP, is an ionospheric research program jointly funded by the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. Navy, the University of Alaska, and the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, designed and built by BAE Advanced Technologies. The most prominent instrument at the HAARP station is the Ionospheric Research Instrument, or IRI, a high-powered radio frequency transmitter facility operating in the high-frequency band. The IRI is used to temporarily excite a limited area of the ionosphere. Other instruments, such as a VHF and UHF radar, a fluxgate magnometer, an ionospheric sounding device, and an induction magnometer, were used to study the physical processes that occur in the excited region. It's also capable of modifying weather, disabling satellites, and exerting mind control over people. And some say that it is being used as a weapon against terrorists. Various individuals have speculated about hidden motives and capabilities of the project. For example, Rosalie Bertell warned in 1996 about the deployment of HAARP as a military weapon. In a book published by the Committee on Monetary and Economic Reform, it is said that recent scientific evidence suggests that HAARP is fully operational and has the ability of triggering floods, droughts, hurricanes, and earthquakes. Over time, HAARP has been blamed for triggering catastrophes such as floods, droughts and hurricanes, thunderstorms, earthquakes in Iran, Pakistan, Haiti, Turkey, Greece, and the Philippines. Major power outages, the downing of TWA Flight 800, Gulf War syndrome, and chronic fatigue syndrome. The facility officially began full operations in the summer of 2007, yielding an effective radiated power of 5.1 gigawatts. Tesla experimented with a number of things that HAARP does. Tesla wanted to alter weather, and while HAARP administrators say it can't affect the weather, that is one of the things they wanted to do. Additionally, Tesla played with the resonance of the Earth, as well as with sound and vibrations. Tesla also saw that rash actions carried consequences. If we were to release the energy of the atoms or discover some other way of developing cheap and unlimited power, at any point of the globe, this accomplishment, instead of being a blessing, might bring disaster to mankind. Tesla said in 1912 that he could split the Earth in two with the right frequencies and the right rhythm, and of course that is what HAARP is playing with. He also said, science is but a perversion of itself unless it has its ultimate goal, the betterment of humanity. But changing the weather was not only one of the discoveries of Tesla, he also invented an earthquake machine. The key to Tesla's discovery was that the Earth itself reverberated with a pulsating electrical current in the low ELF range. In fact, Tesla discovered the exact frequency at which the Earth pulsates normally. By causing many towers to pulsate at the same exact ELF frequency at which the Earth normally pulsates, scientists could create storms, maneuver them, and dissipate them at will. They could cause earthquakes by combining the power from numerous towers. In fact, this Tesla discovery could duplicate almost every single phenomenon of nature. Tesla's electromechanical oscillator is a steam-powered electric generator patented by Nikola Tesla in 1893. Later in life, Tesla claimed one version of the oscillator caused an earthquake in New York City in 1898, gaining in the popular culture title Tesla's earthquake machine. Tesla's oscillator is a reciprocating electrical generator. Steam would be forced into the oscillator and exit through a series of ports, pushing a piston up and down that was attached to an armature, causing it to vibrate up and down at high speed, producing electricity. The casing was by necessity very strong, as temperatures due to pressure heating in the upper chamber exceeded 200 degrees, and the pressure reached 400 psi. Some versions used air trapped between the piston as an air spring, increasing efficiency. Tesla developed many versions of the oscillator and looked on it as a possible replacement for inefficient reciprocating steam engines used to turn generators, but it was superseded by the development of highly efficient steam turbines. Tesla also used the highly regular tunable oscillation of the device to set frequency in his high-frequency electrical and wireless transmission experiments. There are also claims it had a psychological effect on people subjected to its vibrations, in that it acted as a laxative, causing people to immediately run to the bathroom afterwards. Tesla experimented with a small version of his mechanical oscillator at his laboratory, generating a resonance in several buildings, causing complaints to the police. As the speed grew, he said that the machine oscillated at the resonance frequency of his own building, and belatedly realizing the danger, he was forced to use a sledgehammer to terminate the experiment, just as the police arrived. Tesla also claimed the mechanical oscillator could destroy the Empire State Building with 5 pounds of air pressure if attached on a girder, and that he expected to earn $100 million from the oscillator within 2 years. Tesla said the oscillator was about 7 inches long and weighing 1 or 2 pounds, something you could put in your overcoat pocket. Tesla's oscillator slowly builds up, and the effect is accumulative. In time, it could cause earthquakes and tsunamis. If a larger scale version were to be built, it could cause catastrophe on a global scale. Many claim the Navy's SBX-1 is just this sort of radar weapon and is currently deployed to monitor North Korea. The combination of weather modification and oscillation devices could cause earthquakes, tsunamis, and hurricanes in the region. If Tesla were alive today, it's unlikely he would approve of his inventions and ideas being used as weapons by military and governments. Tesla also expounded that his inventions would bring peace to the world. Others, of course, have taken his ideas with their own nefarious plans, including a particle beam weapon Tesla envisioned and drew plans to make. Tesla conceived of free energy for all and weapons that would render war a thing of the past, something that would not go over well with today's power elite. He conceived of a superweapon that would put an end to all war. This treatise is currently in the Nikola Tesla Museum archive in Belgrade. It describes an open-ended vacuum tube with a gas-sealed jet that allows particles to exit, a method of charging particles to millions of volts, and a method of creating and directing non-dispersive particle beams through electrostatic repulsion. Tesla tried to interest the U.S. War Department, the United Kingdom, the Soviet Union, and Yugoslavia in the device. Teleforce was a proposed defensive weapon by Nikola Tesla that accelerated pellets or slugs of material to a high velocity inside a vacuum chamber via electrostatic repulsion, and then fired them out of aimed nozzles at intended targets. Tesla claimed to have conceived of it after studying the Van de Graaff generator. Tesla described the weapon as being able to be used against ground-based infantry or for anti-aircraft purposes. The apparatus projects particles which may be relatively large or of microscopic dimensions, enabling us to convey to a small area of a great distance trillions of times more energy than is possible with rays of any kind. Many thousands of horsepower can thus be transmitted by a stream thinner than a hair, so that nothing can resist. The nozzle would send concentrated beams of particles through the free air, of which tremendous energy they would bring down a fleet of 10,000 enemy airplanes at a distance of 200 miles from a defending nation's border, and will cause armies to drop dead in their tracks. Tesla did not care for the term death ray and preferred peace ray. As he explained, his device was not a ray at all, but rather a stream of charged particles. He said it was a mechanism for generating tremendous electrical force. Tesla claimed to have worked on plans for a directed energy weapon from the early 1900s until his death. In 1937, at a luncheon in his honor concerning the death ray, Tesla stated, "But it is not an experiment. I have built, demonstrated, and used it. Only a little time will pass before I can give it to the world." Whether Tesla's idea was ever taken seriously is still a matter of conjecture. Most experts today consider his idea infeasible, though his death beam bears an uncanny resemblance to the charged particle beam weapons developed by both the United States and the Soviet Union during the Cold War. Tesla attempted to get funding for his device in 1937 when he sent an elaborate technical paper, including diagrams, to a number of allied nations, including the United States. Titled New Art of Projecting Concentrated Non-Dispersive Energy Through Natural Media, the paper provided the first technical description of what is today called a charged particle beam weapon. 2 years later, in 1939, one stage of the plan was tested in the USSR, and Tesla received a check for $25,000. It is possible that today's military charged particle beam weapons came to fruition as a result of that test. On the 17th of May, 1899, Tesla moved to Colorado Springs, where he could have room for his high-voltage, high-frequency experiments. He chose this location because the polyphase alternating current power distribution system had been introduced there, and he had associates who were willing to give him all the power he needed without charging for it. Upon his arrival, he told reporters that he was conducting wireless telegraphy experiments, transmitting signals from Pikes Peak to Paris. The 1978 book Colorado Spring Notes from 1899 to 1900 contains descriptions of Tesla's experiments. On the 15th of June of 1899, Tesla performed his first experiments at his Colorado Springs lab. He recorded his initial spark length of 5 inches long, but very thick and noisy. Tesla investigated atmospheric electricity, observing lightning signals via his receivers. He stated that he observed stationary waves during this time. The great distances and the nature of what Tesla was detecting from lightning storms confirmed his belief that the Earth had a resonant frequency. He produced artificial lightning with discharges consisting of millions of volts and up to 135 feet long. Thunder from the released energy was heard 15 miles away in Cripple Creek, Colorado. People walking along the street observed sparks jumping between their feet and the ground. Sparks sprang from water line taps when touched. Light bulbs within 100 feet of the lab glowed even when turned off. Horses in a livery stable bolted from their stalls after receiving shocks through their metal shoes, and butterflies were electrified, swirling in circles with blue halos of St. Elmo's fire around their wings. While experimenting, Tesla inadvertently faulted a power station generator, causing a power outage. In August of 1917, Tesla explained what had happened in the electrical experimenter. As an example of what has been done with several hundred kilowatts of high-frequency energy liberated, it was found that the dynamos in a powerhouse 6 miles away were repeatedly burned out due to the powerful high-frequency currents set up in them, and which caused heavy sparks to jump through the windings and destroy the insulation. During his time at his lab, Tesla observed unusual signals from his receiver which he concluded may be communications from another planet. He mentioned them in a letter to reporter Julian Hawthorne at the Philadelphia North American in December of 1899, and in a December 1900 letter about possible discoveries in the new century to the Red Cross Society, where he referred to messages from another world that read 1, 2, 3. Reporters treated it as a sensational story and jumped to the conclusion Tesla was hearing signals from Mars. He expanded on the signals he heard in a 1901 Collier's Weekly article, Talking with Planets, where he said it had not been immediately apparent to him that he was hearing intelligently controlled signals, and that the signals could come from Mars, Venus, or other planets. His lab was torn down in 1904, and its contents were sold 2 years later to satisfy a debt. The Colorado experiments had prepared Tesla for the establishment of the transatlantic wireless telecommunication facility known as Wardencliff near Shoreham, Long Island. Tesla's design for Wardencliff grew out of his experiments begun in the early 1890s. His primary goal in these experiments was to develop a new wireless power transmission system. He discarded the idea of using the newly discovered Hertzian radio waves, since Tesla doubted they existed, and basic physics told him, and most other scientists from that period, that they would only travel in straight lines the way visible light did, meaning they would travel straight out into space, becoming hopelessly lost. In laboratory work and later large-scale experiments at Colorado Springs in 1899, Tesla developed his own ideas on how a worldwide wireless system would work. He theorized from these experiments that if he injected electrical current into the Earth at just the right frequency, he could harness what he believed was the planet's own electrical charge and cause it to resonate at a frequency that would be amplified in standing waves that could be tapped anywhere on the planet to run devices or, through modulation, carry a signal. His system was based on 19th century ideas of electrical conduction and telegraphy, instead of the new theories of airborne electromagnetic waves, with an electrical charge being conducted through the ground and being returned through the air. Tesla's design used a concept of a charged conductive upper layer in the atmosphere, a theory dating back to an 1872 idea for a proposed wireless power system. Tesla not only believed that he could use this layer as his return path in his electrical conduction system, but that the power flowing through it would make it glow, providing nighttime lighting for cities and shipping lanes. Using the Earth itself as the medium for conducting the currents, thus dispensing with wires and all other artificial conductors, the machine resembled a pump in its action, drawing electricity from the Earth and driving it back into the same at an enormous rate, thus creating ripples or disturbances which, spreading through the Earth as through a wire, could be detected at great distances by carefully attuned receiving circuits. In this manner, he would be able to transmit to a distance not only signaling, but considerable amounts of energy to any distance around the world. Although Tesla demonstrated wireless power transmission at Colorado Springs, lighting electric lights mounted outside the building where he had his large experimental coil, he did not scientifically test his theories. He believed he had achieved Earth resonance, which, according to his theory, would work at any distance. In 1906, due to financial problems, the site was abandoned, and by 1915, it was demolished for scrap. Tesla was never able to complete the tower project, but with what he learned from it and his Colorado base, he was able to theorize many new inventions that would come as a result of the Wardencliff Tower, including the creation of a flying saucer that would draw energy from the Earth and fly using electromagnetic waves. Over 100 years ago, during the first decade of the 20th century, Tesla filed a request to patent a particular aircraft, which he called the world's first flying saucer. The methods used in the design of the flying saucer matched the descriptions of those who claimed to have seen one from the inside, with a discodal capacitor with sufficient size to provide enough thrust to fly, while other small capacitors allowed to control the direction of the flying saucer, to which he added a gyroscopic stabilization system and an electric drive control. Basically, it is an incredibly well-designed aircraft, one that we could actually manage to build today. Or have we already built it? What happened to this invention? Why are we not flying into space with Tesla's incredible invention? While the patent was granted, the craft had a drawback. Since the aircraft did not include an energy source of its own, it needed to be energized by the towers of wireless transmission, Tesla's sources of free energy. The lack of funding led to the abandonment of the development of the towers, so eventually the ship also fell into darkness, and Tesla's saucer was never made. The United States Secret Service seized all patents belonging to Tesla after his death for reasons of national security. Now, if Tesla's ideas were insane, as some had categorized them, why would the United States Secret Service seize the patents for reasons of national security? The ideas of the great Nikola Tesla are incredible, and better yet, way ahead of its time. Many of his inventions aimed at contributing towards world peace through free energy access, but governments and financiers of the time did not follow the progress of Tesla's mind. Though Tesla's papers were sequestered away for national security purposes, he did have a protégé that he taught how to build working flying saucers. Otis T. Carr was a protégé of the great inventor Nikola Tesla. Carr and his team constructed a number of fully functional flying saucers in the late 1950s. The flying discs worked and were demonstrated. Carr was serious about taking his craft to the moon. However, 2 weeks after a dramatic test flight, their laboratory was forcibly closed. Federal agents confiscated equipment as well as all documentation. Authorities told them Carr's project would destroy the monetary system of the United States. Carr died in 1980, but not before proving Tesla's flying saucer would indeed work. At the time Tesla was teaching the likes of Carr, Arthur Matthews, and Einstein, we should consider what was happening in Nazi Germany. Hitler and his fascist regime of the late 1930s may have also developed the electrified disc known as the saucer. The flying electric motor is a scientific possibility. Why wouldn't German scientists be close to discovering the answer? Perhaps they did. The Third Reich did conduct research into advanced propulsion technology, including rocketry, Victor Scharberger's engine research, flying wing craft, and the Arthur Sack AS-6 experimental circular winged aircraft. Some UFO sightings during World War II, particularly those known as Foo Fighters, were thought by the Allies to be prototype enemy aircraft designed to harass Allied aircraft through electromagnetic disruption, a technology similar to today's electromagnetic pulse weapons. The Bell UFO was among the first flying objects to be connected with the Nazis. It apparently had occult markings on it, and it was also rumored to have been very similar to a Wehrmacht document about a vertical takeoff aircraft. It is directly related to the supposed crash of a bell-shaped object that occurred in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, in the USA on December 9th of 1965. That same month, German engineer Rudolf Schirmer gave an interview to a German news magazine in which he claims that he had designed a craft powered by a circular plane of rotating turbine blades 49 feet in diameter. He said that the project had been developed by him and his team at BMW's Prague Works until April of 1945, when he fled Czechoslovakia. His designs for the disc and a model were stolen from his workshop in 1948, and he was convinced that Czech agents had built his craft for a foreign power. Aeronautical engineer Roy Fedden remarked that the only craft that could approach the capabilities attributed to flying saucers were those being designed by the Germans towards the end of the war. Fedden, who was also chief of the technical mission to Germany for the Ministry of Aircraft Production, stated in 1945, "I have seen enough of these designs and production plans to realize that if they, the Germans, had managed to prolong the war some months longer, we would have been confronted with a set of entirely new and deadly developments in air warfare." Operation Paperclip brought many German scientists to America after the war, and many believe construction of flying saucers continued in New Mexico. Is it possible that the UFOs seen today are advanced aircraft built and designed by governments using Tesla's hidden papers? It would be very difficult to argue that Nikola Tesla was not a genius. The famous 20th century Serbian American is known most for his design of the alternating electricity system. But a single feat of engineering would not necessarily be enough to consider this man a genius. Indeed, he could also speak 8 languages and had a completely eidetic memory. Over his life, he held 300 patents, and all of these things combined is probably the reason Elon Musk named his technology company after the great Nikola Tesla. But looking at statements he made in his lifetime, Tesla seemed to also be some kind of prophet. After all, he predicted smartphones in 1926. In an interview with John B. Kennedy, he said, "When wireless is perfectly applied, the whole Earth will be converted into a huge brain, which in fact it is, all things being particles of a real and rhythmic whole. We shall be able to communicate with one another instantly, irrespective of distance. Not only this, but through television and telephone, we shall see and hear one another as perfectly as though we were face to face, despite intervening distances of thousands of miles, and the instruments through which we shall be able to do this will be amazingly simple compared with our present telephone. A man will be able to carry one in his vest pocket." Tesla is describing cellular telephones. Tesla had a very odd childhood, often afflicted by particular blinding flashes of light that appeared before his eyes, accompanied by disturbing visions that caused Tesla great discomfort. And by the time he reached his teens, he had taught himself to repress them from occurring except in certain times of stress. In the early 1930s, the U.S. military and the University of Chicago investigated the possibility of invisibility through the use of electricity and magnetism. In 1936, Tesla was named by Franklin D. Roosevelt director of the project. In the same year, the team of geniuses, including Albert Einstein, was successful making small objects invisible. In 1939, it was moved to Princeton's Institute of Advanced Studies, not far from Philadelphia. In 1940, they decided to carry a full test at the Brooklyn Navy Yard with 2 small ships. Everything worked, and the test was declared a success. An important point here is that there was no one on board the test vehicle. In 1942, Tesla was given a ship and a crew for a full-size test with humans on board. Tesla got a battleship. Tesla warned him about severe problems with personnel if people were on the ship when it became invisible. During the 30s, Tesla was testing a communicator device and supposedly received radio signals from outer space. He strongly believed these signals were sent by alien intelligences. According to Arthur Matthews, an apprentice that worked with him until his death in 1943, claimed to the public in certain occasions that this device, named Teslascope, could receive radio signals from cosmic rays for the purpose of communicating with Mars, and Tesla was hearing alien voices. Preston Nichols, an electric engineer that supposedly worked in the Montauk Project, had claimed that Tesla had support of the aliens he was contacting, and they warned him about an unsolved problem with the manned test. Tesla sabotaged the 42 test in an attempt to stop the project, turning off the equipment. He was succeeded and decided to leave the work group, passing the leadership to von Neumann, that made several changes in some of the equipment built into the USS Eldridge. In August 1943, Neumann carried out the test anyway, with 33 volunteers on board the ship. It began, and for about a minute everything was okay. The ship's outline could be seen in the water. There was suddenly a blue flash, and the ship disappeared entirely. No radio communication was possible. The ship had vanished. The Navy assumed the experiment was successful and the ship reached invisibility through electromagnetism, a process known as degaussing. But they were wrong. The ship just vanished through a space-time fold. Hours later, it returned to the dock. There was a greenish haze on the deck. Some of the sailors were on fire, insane, or sick. Some had heart attacks, while others were dead. Some were even melted into the metallic structures of the main deck. Many said that other men just seemed to disappear and were never seen again. Tesla was right. Whoever was contacting Tesla provided him correct data about what indeed happened with the crew of the USS Eldridge. Today, this incident is known as the Philadelphia Experiment. Was Tesla psychic, or having contact with extraterrestrials? Because his more detailed papers are now held secret, we may never know. Tesla had many extraordinary ideas that never came to fruition. He envisioned inventing a machine to read mental imagery and thoughts. In an article published in the Kansas City Journal-Post in September of 1933, he told reporters about several projects he had been working on, including a device that concerns photographing of thought. "I expect to photograph thoughts," Tesla said. "In 1893, I became convinced that a definite image formed in thought must by reflex action produce a corresponding image on the retina, which might be read by a suitable apparatus. Now, if it be true that a thought reflects an image on the retina, it is a mere question of illuminating the same property and taking photographs, and then using the ordinary methods which are available to project the image on a screen. If this can be done successfully, then the objects imagined by a person could be clearly reflected on the screen as they are formed, and in this way every thought of the individual could be read. Our minds would then indeed be like an open book," he continued. Tesla's plan never became a reality, but researchers are still studying vision and exploring the idea of mind-reading machines. Today, scientists have created artificial retinas through sophisticated mathematical analysis of how real retinas convert images to electrical impulses to send up to the brain. In attempts at mind reading, scientists have developed algorithms that can learn to interpret brain signals and reproduce a rough version of images seen in a person's mind. Tesla may also have had a good grasp of what it feels like to watch real-time streaming video on modern-day laptops and smartphones. In a news clip published on January the 26th of 1926, Tesla predicted that by applying the principles of radio, future devices will enable people to carry a small instrument in their pockets to see distant events. The futuristic idea was described in an interview published in the current issue of Collier's Weekly, in which Tesla says, "We shall be able to witness the inauguration of a president, the playing of a World Series baseball game, the havoc of an earthquake, or a battle just as though we were present." The idea was to create a plan for a world telegraphy system that allows instant communication of news to individual handheld devices. Tesla believed J.P. Morgan could make money by manufacturing such receivers that could be used by anyone and could pick up voice messages or music played in distant places. In 1899, during the time Tesla spent in Colorado Springs, Colorado, experimenting with high-frequency electricity and wireless telegraphy, Tesla picked up particular radio signals on his instruments. He believed the signals were extraterrestrial in origin. The changes I noted were taking place periodically and with such a clear suggestion of number and order that they were not traceable to any cause known to me. I was familiar, of course, with such electrical disturbances as are produced by the sun, aurora borealis, and earth currents, and I was as sure as I could be of any fact that these variations were due to none of these causes. The feeling is constantly growing on me that I had been the first to hear the greetings of one planet to another. The scientific community didn't believe Tesla had made contact with aliens, but later it was suggested that he may have picked up cosmic radio waves, a phenomenon that was not known at the time. Or it's possible that Tesla's sensitive instruments had received the radio messages of Italian inventor Marconi. He was transmitting from Europe. Tesla was raised an Orthodox Christian. Later in his life, he did not consider himself to be a believer in the Orthodox sense and opposed religious fanaticism. Despite this, he had a profound respect for both Buddhism and Christianity. Many believe that Tesla's missing papers contain Tesla's revelations on the roots of Eastern mysticism coming from his interest in Vedic philosophy. Tesla was supposedly so influenced by the Vedic teachings of Swami Vivekananda that Tesla began to use Sanskrit words to name some of his fundamental concepts regarding matter and energy. Vedic philosophy provides answers to all unanswered questions, such as why there is pain and pleasure, rich and poor, healthy and sick, who is God, his qualities, nature, and works, what is soul, its nature and qualities, souls of humans and animals incarnated, how does it happen, why one is born as he or she is, what is the purpose of life. This is not so unbelievable as assertion. Physicists are often very open to the idea of unifying the realms of physics and philosophy. The properties of space have been postulated by many, from ancient Vedic philosophy, Eastern mystics, various ancient civilizations throughout human history, all the way to Einstein, Newton, and more. Humans are curious beings, and our quest to discover what is will never end. Science now knows that a material universe as the foundation of what we perceive to be our physical material world isn't quite the case. Today, physicists recognize that physical atoms are actually made up of vortices of energy that are constantly spinning and vibrating. At its smallest observable level, matter is energy, and this energy that exists all around us can be tapped into and possibly used to generate power. Quantum physics has left many scientists baffled. Again, the discovery that our physical material reality isn't really physical at all can be quite confusing. Scientists began to explore the relationship between energy and the structure of matter at the turn of the 19th century. This is approximately the time when the idea of a Newtonian material universe was dropped from the heart of scientific knowing and replaced by the fact that matter is nothing but an illusion that everything in the universe is made out of energy. Tesla said, all perceptible matter comes from a primary substance or tenuity beyond conception, filling all space, the akasha, or luminous ether, which is acting upon by the life-giving prana, or creative force, called into existence in never-ending cycles all things and phenomena. Tesla was aware of ancient concepts and the correlation it had with the science he was working on, using Sanskrit words like akasha and prana to describe the force and matter that exists all around us. These words come from Eastern mysticism religion. Tesla began using the Sanskrit words after meeting with a Swami and after studying the Eastern view of the true nature of reality, about the mechanisms that drive the material world. Eventually, it led him to the basis for the wireless transmission of electrical power, what is known as the Tesla coil transformer. Tesla understood the Sanskrit terminology and philosophy and found that it was a good means to describe the physical mechanisms of the universe as seen through his eyes. This is what Tesla was talking about when he said that man would attach their machinery to the very will work of nature. Tesla said, "The day science begins to study non-physical phenomena, it will make more progress in 1 decade than all the previous centuries of its existence." Tesla was on the verge of bringing the world into a whole new realm of enlightenment. The Swami knew this and met with Tesla in the hopes he would usher in a correlation between science and his 5,000-year-old teachings. He was hopeful that Tesla would be able to show that what we call matter is simply potential energy, because that would reconcile the teachings of the Vedas with modern science. The Swami realized that in that case, the Vedic cosmology would be placed on the surest of foundations. Brian O'Leary, a former NASA astronaut and Princeton physics professor, has stated, "These concepts have been proven in hundreds of laboratories throughout the world, and yet they have not really seen the light of day. If these technologies were to be set free worldwide, the change would be profound. It would be applicable everywhere. These technologies are absolutely the most important thing that have happened in the history of the world." We've seen a very interesting trend, especially within the past decade, of modern-day science catching up to an ancient understanding about the true nature of reality, its makeup, how it functions, and how we can work with it to bring about change on our planet. For anybody to label the merging of spirituality and science as pseudoscience means they have not properly investigated it. Spiritual concepts of our ancient world are directly intertwined with modern-day science, more so quantum physics, and Nikola Tesla was well aware of this. Science works best when in harmony with nature. If we put these two together, we can discover great technologies that can only come about when the consciousness of the planet is ready to embrace them. One example is free energy, also known as zero-point energy, which utilizes the substance that exists all around us and converts it into usable energy. This would give us a limitless source of energy and would practically wipe out all poverty on the planet. The zero-point energy, ZPE, is an intrinsic and unavoidable part of quantum physics. The ZPE has been studied both theoretically and experimentally since the discovery of quantum mechanics in the 1920s, and there can be no doubt that the ZPE is a real physical effect. Zero-point energy, also called quantum vacuum zero-point energy, is the lowest possible energy that a quantum mechanical physical system may have. It is the energy of its ground state. All quantum mechanical systems undergo fluctuations even in their ground state and have associated zero-point energy, a consequence of their wave-like structure. The uncertainty principle requires every physical system to have a zero-point energy greater than the minimum of its classical potential well. This results in motion, even at absolute zero. For example, liquid helium does not freeze under atmospheric pressure at any temperature because it's zero-point energy. Vacuum energy is the zero-point energy of all the fields in space. It is the energy of the vacuum which, in quantum field theory, is defined not as empty space, but as the ground state of the fields. In cosmology, the vacuum energy is one possible explanation for the cosmological constant. A related term is zero-point field, which is the lowest energy state of a particular field. Imagine our world today if Nikola Tesla had been given financial and scientific support during his time. Our world would be very different. The integrated circuit and diodes, transistors, and other electrical components would have been invented much earlier. We would live in a society with free energy and devices for everything. We would likely be colonizing our solar system now and probably exploring the stars. We may even have made contact with extraterrestrial civilizations that had already developed this technology. Quantum physics are just now catching up with Tesla, and our world will have to give up systems we have relied on for new and better technology to take over, systems that our current political and corporate masters will not relinquish easily. We live in a vast sea of energy. Everything, every atom, every subatomic particle is in constant motion, spinning eternally. Even in the cold, dark, absolute vacuum of empty space, there exists what physics is calling the quantum vacuum flux. It is the ether of the ancients, the life force energy of metaphysics, and the random fluctuations of this vast field of potential in which space and time are embedded. If we continue on the course of burning fossil fuels and relying on nuclear power, the future of our civilization is in grave jeopardy. We're at a turning point where the ravages of industrial pollution and radioactive waste have exceeded the capacity of our Mother Earth. our limited reserves of oil and gas will be completely exhausted by the year 2025 at the present rate of consumption. Large corporate and governmental self-interest ignore this pending crisis and resist change to the status quo. We have reached a point where we must heed the warnings and revisit technologies that were conceived of decades ago by Tesla, and bring about a new world that isn't squandered by corporate interests. Nikola Tesla symbolizes a unifying force and inspiration for all nations in the name of peace and science. He was a true visionary far ahead of his contemporaries in the field of scientific development. Perhaps all of his works will one day be rediscovered, and our planet will benefit once again from his genius.